It's what I spoke about, Siobhan, 2 years ago when I last came here. Because for me, this is not just dialogue. It's a partnership of us all, the British nation, facing down the challenges of a volatile world together. It's a more volatile world than I think many of us have seen in many years. And frankly, the more I see the way this world is changing, the more I see the future that we must build. And the more convinced I am about the need for this unity, a sense between us of shared national purpose. And that is, I believe, how we can rise again together, and mark my words, we will. Take the spending review. This is a clear shift in the nature of this government, beyond fixing those inherited problems, and now investing in the future of our country. We've, as it were, wiped the slate clean, we've stabilised the economy, and now we can go on to the next phase of government, building on that foundation, building a fairer Britain, change and renewal that you can feel. And that means, of course, that we have to back you to the hilt, because your members are the engines of growth in every community across the United Kingdom. And that's the responsibility of partnership. And we want to be the best state partner for enterprise anywhere in the world, and to give you the best possible conditions to succeed. And I am optimistic about this. Now, don't get me wrong, I know that the trading environment is not easy. The challenges that you face are front and centre of my mind. When I'm sitting across the negotiating table with the EU, with the US, with India, whoever it is, trust me, I'm fighting for you. And politics is about who do you have in your mind's eye. But together, I do believe we've got to stop doing that British understatement thing. And we do it all the time, including me. Because believe you me, this is a great moment to get on the phone to the world and say, take another look at Britain. I was speaking to Jensen Huang the other week, CEO of NVIDIA, the largest semiconductor company in the world. And he was saying Britain is in a Goldilocks situation on AI, ready to take off, a really good place to be investing. You can see it with Amazon this week. A massive £40 billion investment in our country, one of the biggest investments that's ever gone in. Thousands of jobs created in Hull, in the East Midlands, in Northampton. Which means that since July of last year, we've attracted over £120 billion into our economy. Now, you will all get this and understand this straight away. But these are companies that can invest anywhere in the world. They don't have to invest here, but they're choosing Britain. And that's a sign of confidence in our plan for change, that we are a stable partner, that we are open for business, that we are putting our money in your customers' pockets. And real wages are up more in the first 10 months of this government than they were in the first 10 years of the Tory era. 380,000 jobs have been created. More demand for your goods and your services. More opportunities to boost your bottom line. Because, and this is crucial, as we fix those foundations, we also make choices that will make us a fairer, more prosperous country. For example, as Siobhan mentioned, 2 years ago at this conference, I set out that bold vision in relation to planning reform, then leader of the opposition, to remove the blockages in the system, to build the labs, the warehouses, the grid connections that all of your businesses need. And 2 years later, standing here, that vision is written into legislation, and we're pushing it through Parliament. And every day new spades are hitting the ground. Growth revised up because of it. A promise made to you 2 years ago. A promise delivered. It's the same with our industrial strategy announced earlier this week. For far too long, Britain ignored this We didn't back businesses. We didn't invest in projects and technology that are critical to our future. Didn't have a plan that gave your businesses the certainty that you need. Well, now we have that plan, and it's been drawn up in partnership, and it is, quotes, a significant step forward for our economy. That's not my words, they're Siobhan's words. And as she says, and this to me was the most important part in Siobhan's response on your behalf, that what you shared with us, what you fed in, has been, quotes, heard and reflected in our strategy. Your fingerprints are on that strategy. It came out of the discussions that I and others have had with many people in this room. It wasn't plucked out of the sky by a government. It was reflecting back what you had told us needed to change. And that is what I mean by partnership, where both partners do different things, bring different things to the table. It's a statement shared by other leaders. What Siobhan said wasn't just what Siobhan thought, what you thought. It was the sentiments of the CBI, of Enterprise Nation, the Federation of Small Businesses, Make UK, Small Business Britain, and the Startup Coalition, backing British business with significant investment in R&D, new technical colleges across the country, electricity bills slashed for more than 7,000 businesses. That'll make a massive difference. So many people in this room and elsewhere have said to me, it's the energy costs here, they're not competitive across Europe, we have to find a way to bring them down. That's what we've been able to do, to boost our competitiveness. A promise that we made and a promise that we have delivered. And across the country, it's the same story. Stripping out regulation that blocks investment. Pushing forward with radical devolution agenda. Investing in skills and making sure that that's devolved. Unlocking pension wealth to back British business. Building new infrastructure the length and breadth of our country. Carbon capture projects in Merseyside, in Scotland, and along the East Coast. Nuclear in Nottinghamshire and, of course, at Sizewell. Rail investment in Wales, a new runway at Heathrow, new metro schemes everywhere, from the North East to the West Midlands, Manchester, Sheffield and Leeds. And now today, another step, a new trade strategy that I am proud to launch at this conference, because there's no better place for that than with Britain's leading exporters, with you. It builds, as you would have expected, and of course, on the deals we've already struck with India, the United States and the European Union. The hat-trick, as I call it. And I've played defensive midfield all my life as a footballer. The last time I got a hat-trick, I think, was when the kids were about 7 and I could just about get the ball past them. So I'm going to take this particular hat-trick. But look, seriously, you don't need me to stand here and tell you how important these trade deals are. The EU SPS agreement on its own is a huge boost for food exporters and importers, driving down the cost base for retailers, reducing friction for our exports, a huge boost for the food industry. And I think a sign that partnership is not just empty rhetoric, that we're prepared to fight for your interests, prepared to make a political case for the growth and jobs that you can deliver. Small businesses, of course, as well as larger firms. And that EU-UK reset is so important on so many strands. There were 10 strands to that agreement. The SBS was one of them. There was the Defence and Security Partnership. Yesterday, I was at the NATO summit. We were increasing spending on defence across all of our allies. And because of the relationships that we've built, as people increase their spending, they're coming to us for discussion. They were doing it in the margins of the meetings yesterday, because they know that we have the ability to help them with the defence capability that they need to build. And it's therefore the EU-UK reset is about the strands that are in the deal, but it's also about the relationships that we're building that absolutely help and enable trade, and you will understand that. But that mindset is true of all the other deals. The US deal, hugely important for car manufacturing, particularly for companies like Jaguar Land Rover. And before we made the deal and after we made the deal, I went to Solihull to JLR a number of times to speak to the workers there and to look into their eyes. And I know how much it meant to them. Before the deal, they knew that trading at 27.5% tariffs into the North American market was really difficult. And they absolutely appreciated what that meant for them, for their jobs, for their families and their communities. And that's why when we got the deal done, when we got it over the line eventually last week, that signature, the CEO of JLR, Adrian Mardell, called me and made it crystal clear that thousands of jobs across the West Midlands had been saved. And then think of the supply chains that go with that, in logistics, in engineering, in freight. Think of the demand in the local economy, the cafes, the retailers, the pubs. And that is all true of that deal. It's why we had to be so focused to achieve that deal. The only country in the world to have got a trade deal with the US, something which we've been talking about for a very, very long time, is vital for the sectors that it protects. And that approach is true also of the India deal, again talked about for a very long time, but an unprecedented opportunity for UK PLC to access the world's fastest growing economy. And I've spoken to some of our whisky and gin distillers about the India deal, and they've told me that their concern now is whether they can produce enough to meet the demand. What a great problem to have. What a great problem. It's a huge win for them. And under the India deal, tariffs for our car manufacturers slashed from over 100% to just 10%, the best terms of any country in the world. A deal which people said could never be done. That actually is true of all three deals. They said it wouldn't be possible to get a US deal. It wouldn't be possible to get an EU deal. If you had a US deal, you had to choose between the two, and it certainly wouldn't be possible to get an India deal. And we've been able to get them, and that is brilliant for Britain and brilliant for you. And we'll go forward from here. And it's not just the terms of the trade deal. It's the signal that it sends about us, a transformation of our global brand. Because for years, the message the previous government was sending to the world was one of chaos, instability, the lack of courage to strike deals. Because when push comes to shove, in my view, they put politics before country. And together, we've now completely turned the page on that. With these three deals, we've rewritten our brand, restored our identity, that even in this volatile world, Britain is proudly, unashamedly, defiantly even, open for business. And today's trade strategy builds on that. We're going to keep pushing, keep making deals, keep opening up new markets for you. We're expanding the capacity of our export credit agency by £20 billion. And I know how important that is for everyone in this room. We're launching a new Ricardo Fund. We will reduce trade friction for professionals in engineering, architecture, accountancy, and so much more, opening up £5 billion worth of export opportunities. Because trade isn't just about goods. We're a services superpower. So we'll back our exporting services as well, show more flexibility in that approach. And what we want to do is push not just for traditional trade agreements, but also for smaller deals that we can make quicker at pace, whether that's a digital trade agreement with Brazil, Thailand or Kenya, clean energy cooperation with the Philippines and Mexico, professional qualification recognition all around the world. But perhaps, most importantly, in this uncertain and challenging world, we will also give ourselves new powers on trade defence. Make sure that if your businesses are threatened by practices like dumping, that we have the right powers to defend you. And I'm determined that Britain becomes a global champion for free trade. I'm determined that we are the beacon for those values. And frankly, I think our actions already speak louder than any words. But in a world where things can change quickly, as you've seen in the recent days, we've seen in sectors like steel, that protection measures do need to be put in place, then we have to be ready to back British business. And that is what we've done on trade. That is what we will do in the future, right across our economy. Businesses creating wealth in every community, and a Labour government investing in the skills, the infrastructure, the future that we need to build. A partnership in the national interest, driving us forward, delivering change and renewal, putting more money in the pockets of working people. That is the change that we can deliver together, a Britain that is back in business. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Hi.
Grab a seat.
Thank you very much.
We're going to go from Goldilocks to Iran.
Very good.
They've now partially reopened their airspace. The ceasefire with Israel, it does seem to be holding, thankfully. But how concerned are you about the economic impact if there is a renewal of violence and prolonged instability across the region? How worried should UK businesses be?
I think we should all be concerned. What we saw in the last week or two was the immediate impact on oil prices of the conflict in Iran. Happily, there's a ceasefire, and amongst the things we've been working at pace on with our partners is making sure that ceasefire remains in place, that we de-escalate and have stability across the region, but it's fragile, as everybody in this room will appreciate. And I think I'm right in saying that the impact of international affairs on us domestically has never been so direct as it is at the moment. So you saw it in oil prices. To take the other obvious example, in the 3+ years of the Ukraine conflict, energy prices have gone up considerably as a result of that conflict. So we have to recognise that. That's why diplomacy matters on the global stage, to try and de-escalate and resolve situations, which is what I've spent a lot of time doing. It's also why we need to insulate ourselves here as best we can. Amongst the reasons I want clean power and to get to renewables as quickly as possible by 2030 is not just because it's right for jobs, technology, and cheaper in the long run. It's also because it's energy secure. It takes us off a volatile international market and gives us better control over our energy. There are measures that we can... The trade deals, a 10-year industrial strategy, they are all intended to be good in their own right, but help us cushion and insulate against global conflict. I think we are living in a period of global conflict, the like of which we haven't seen in a very long time. The world is more unstable and we have to take measures. The other thing I know this is a long answer now, but I have been saying defence and security, we're in a new era, things have to change on trade and the economy as well. Whatever we think of tariffs, they are undoubtedly an attempt to change the way the world economy is run. Right. And we have to recognise that. I don't think we're going to be going back in a few weeks or months to how it was before this administration came in. We're in for a different future, and we need to think through what that means. Trade deals, lowering trade barriers, the trade strategy I've just set out is a reflection of that, as is turbocharging our support for business here. We have to adapt to a changed world. And if we can do that at speed and get ahead of others, it's a huge opportunity.
Yeah, you talk about that trade strategy with the aim, and I quote, to make the UK the most connected nation in the world while protecting vital industries from global threats and backing businesses to thrive. How are you going to do that?
Well, first thing is to get the trade deals that we've got. And to get 3 in a row like that was really important. The smaller deals, I think, are really important because we can do them in an agile way within particular sectors. You know, there's the big comprehensive free trade agreements. They're good, but they take a long time to negotiate. Small sector-specific deals are the way forward. I think we should also talk to like-minded countries because they recognise that the world is changing. So I've been talking to the leaders in Japan, in Singapore, in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, about how we, the UK, can trade in an easier, better way with them, whether we as a group of countries can trade with other countries in an easier and better way. So I do think that it's a difficult environment, but there are significant opportunities if we're agile about it and if we understand the world we're living in and get ahead of the curve.
Yeah, you need to start delivering sooner rather than later. The EU reset relationship with the UK, for instance, when are you going to deliver on that? Red tape is still a problem for many people in this room, and barriers need to be brought down sooner rather than later.
Yeah, so we're going at that at pace. We had the first EU-UK summit just a few weeks ago. That is going to be a yearly event, and so we want to move on in iterations. The reason we did it yearly is to make sure that we have milestones to gauge how more quickly we can go. I'm actually really pleased that we got 10 strands of that agreement. We started the negotiations in October of last year. That's when I sat down with the President of the Commission, Ursula. And then by 6-7 months later, we'd got a pretty wide agreement with the EU with 10 strands to it. There's the SBS agreement, hugely important for food, for supermarkets, retail, etc. But there's also the defence and security aspect, which unlocks the gate for us to the safe funding in the EU. And in this era where lots of countries are going to be spending more on defence, there is a live discussion going on about where those contracts are going to be to put ourselves in the position where we can take advantage of that. But also within the EU deal, the work we did on energy, on carbon emissions, etc. So we need to move at pace on that, and the quicker the better. And that's already progressing with the EU.
Yeah, many in the room would agree that you need to really get cracking on that. You admit you've asked a lot of business since you've become Prime Minister. Do you fully get the concerns that there are, deep concerns, when it comes to the Employment Rights Bill?
On the Employment Rights Bill, yes, I get the concerns. One good thing about businesses, they don't hold back when they talk to me about concerns. And quite right too, because those conversations really matter. It meant a lot. I've already said this to Siobhan this morning. It meant a lot to me that Siobhan put out a response to our industrial strategy, which not just said it was good, but said it reflected what you had fed into us. That is because I believe that government isn't as good at doing business as business is as good at doing business. And therefore feeding back what business said to us. So yes, people have raised concerns with me about the Employment Rights Bill, but equally, many people have recognised that a secure, protected workforce is good for business, drives up productivity, and most of what's in the Employment Rights Bill is done by good businesses in any event. It is good practice in many businesses. We'll continue to work with you as we implement it, of course, as I think you'll see in the work we've done in government. But in the end, I firmly believe that a well-respected, well-protected workforce is an essential ingredient for economic growth and drives up productivity, and that's the place that we want to get to.
Okay, running out of time, I want to get a couple of questions from the floor, and I know we've got a couple of people here in the front who want to ask a question. Just give us your name and where you're from, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Clive. Good morning. I'm John McCabe from
good to see you again, John.
North East Chamber of Commerce. Great to see you again, Prime Minister. You talked in your speech about devolution, and Chambers of Commerce across the North came together recently to welcome the Great North Initiative that our respective Metro Mayors came together to launch. I just wonder if we could have your thoughts on how together we can ensure that that's not just another slogan, it's a meaningful strategy which will deliver and drive economic growth across the North, with Chambers playing an absolutely pivotal role linking between national government, regional leadership and the business community. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And I think devolution is critical to growth for a number of reasons. First, economic growth can't just be a line on a graph measured in some parts of the country but not others. It's got to be everywhere. And it's got to be felt by people everywhere, and therefore devolution is an essential part of that to meet the challenge that it's got to be growth in every part. I also believe, as a fundamental principle, that those with skin in the game make the best decisions about their own communities. Because the difference between somebody in Whitehall taking a decision about the North East and someone in the North East taking a decision about the North East is massive. Because if you live, if you work, if you've got a business in the North East, you absolutely care as to whether each and every part of the decision is the right decision. I think mayors give us an opportunity. We were a bit wary of mayors as Labour to start with, but actually, on reflection, I think they've worked really well. We want to build them up because they give the political representation on a scale that works for business, and that's why, to give an example, on things like infrastructure and skills, I want that to be led from development. So when we're thinking, what's the infrastructure, what's the transport, the first thing we do is talk to businesses and mayors in the region to say, what would be, given the amount of money we've got, what's the best transport? Equally on skills, because I think if local businesses, local politicians and local colleges get round the table to say, what are the skills that are needed by the businesses in the North East, not generally across the country, but in the North East, they're likely to come up with the right courses in the right colleges to feed into the businesses that are there. So this isn't just a political slogan for me, it's a way of doing business, and I genuinely believe it'll produce much better results than teams of people in Whitehall trying to make decisions. We've tried that model, it doesn't really work, for the obvious reason that somebody sitting in Whitehall will never make as good a decision as you will about what's needed in the North East or anywhere in the country.
All right, thank you for that. And one more question briefly. The front here, I think. Oh, here we are.
Right, thank you. Good morning, Prime Minister, and thank you very much. Charlotte Horrobin, I'm the Chief Executive of the Cambridgeshire Chambers of Commerce, and Cambridge is, of course, a jewel in our crown. Yep. It's an absolute global hub of innovation, but we do face some challenges around investment into our infrastructure. We do have planning delays, and we desperately do need housing. So how can government help to make sure that we unlock and unleash the technology and the innovation opportunity, not just in Cambridgeshire, but for the whole country?
Thank you very much. I'll try and give a short answer to two or three aspects of that question, which are really important. On infrastructure and housing and building, we have to move on planning. And that's why the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is so important, because you almost don't need me to tell this, but the time it takes from the idea of a project, the concept, through to the build and the finish of a project is far too long. Housing projects that are sort of 10 years, 15 years. I went to one during the election campaign just outside York, and from the first planning application to the house I saw with a front door that someone could live in was 25 years. Far too long. And so planning is intended to, the Planning and Infrastructure Bill is to shorten all that and make sure that whether it's houses, infrastructure, sorting out the grid for power has to be speeded up, has to be much more efficient. I do think, just to take the second part of your question, technology and AI are hugely important in this as well. And on AI, I think there are two stances. You can either be forward-leaning, seeing it as a huge opportunity that's going to transform our businesses, large and small, or you can lean out and see it as a bit of a risk, better be cautious, put a lot of regulation around it. I'm a leaner in. I think it's going to be transformative. And we put out our AI action plan at the beginning of the year, had a very successful London Tech Week a few weeks ago. And I think for all businesses, we need to support you in making maximum use of AI. And I think that AI makes us more human, which sounds counterintuitive, but using AI to do all the bits that take a lot of time, don't involve a lot of human intellect, frees up the time for the human decision-making. I mean, one of the examples I can give, we just co-created an AI tool in government, actually, in planning, which allows us to suck up all of the material into one place at great speed and organise it, which used to take human beings a very, very long time to do. That allows the planning decision to be taken by a human being at speed, because they're not wasting their time or waiting for that exercise to be done. It's a small example. There are plenty of others. Other aspects of government, social workers are now using AI to do a lot of the administration so that they can use their professional skills where they're needed. So many, many examples on technology. We need to push ahead, planning and infrastructure push ahead. But in a sense, there's a mindset here, which is let's just knock the barriers out the way that are stood in the way of growth, whether it's regulation, planning, infrastructure, slowness, the grid not being quick enough, AI and tech not being accessible enough. They're the sort of barriers that need to be knocked out the way. That's the partnership between government and business. And I think I said this 2 years ago, Siobhan, which is a true partnership is not two people or two bodies trying to do the same thing. It's two people or bodies realising they bring different things to the table. Government shouldn't try to run businesses. We've done that in the past. It doesn't work particularly well. So business should run business. Government should partner business by creating the conditions which makes it easier for businesses to run their businesses.
Prime Minister, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Sir Keir Starmer.
Thank you. Thank you, Clive. Good to see you.
No, we've run journalism school together. That's where we started, so it's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And he's still in touch with you too. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we continue. I hope the Prime Minister answered some of your questions. I hope you got a little bit of an insight into what the government says it's trying to do to help everyone in this room. Now, can I ask Siobhan to come back to the stage, please?